The devastation caused by Hurricane Helene has left a dangerous ripple effect across the United States, threatening not just homes and infrastructure but the very foundation of the country's healthcare system. In the aftermath of the storm, hospitals nationwide are now grappling with a critical shortage of IV fluids, a resource so fundamental to modern medicine that its absence could mean life or death for countless patients. The irony is thick. One hurricane has exposed the United States' utter failure to secure something as vital as IV fluids, leaving the healthcare system teetering on the edge of collapse. The perfect storm. Hurricane Helene and the IV fluid crisis. Baxter International, the largest IV fluid manufacturer in the U.S., operates a massive facility in North Cove, North Carolina. Producing 1.5 million bags of IV fluid daily, this plant supplies 60% of America's total stock. Hurricane Helene hit the facility hard, flooding the plant and disrupting production. As hospitals scramble to conserve their remaining supplies, the shortfall has been nothing short of catastrophic. Reports from across the nation paint a grim picture. At Mass General Brigham in Boston, clinicians are rationing fluids, while UVA Hospital has been forced to postpone non-emergency surgeries due to the shortage. Hospitals, already struggling to meet demand before the hurricane, are now forced to triage patients, deciding who gets treated and who has to wait. Elective surgeries and non-life-threatening procedures are being delayed, and the backlog is growing by the day. Even with the Biden administration invoking the Defense Production Act to ramp up production and allow Baxter to import supplies from abroad, the question remains: how did we get here? How did one storm leave the U.S. healthcare system on the verge of a national disaster? A healthcare system too fragile to survive? The answer lies in the utter myopia that has long plagued U.S. healthcare planning. For years, the vulnerability of the IV fluid supply chain has been an open secret. Even before Hurricane Helene, hospitals were already feeling the pinch of recurring shortages. In 2017, Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, another key hub for medical manufacturing, including IV fluids. The resulting shortage sent shockwaves through the healthcare industry, yet little was done to prevent future disruptions. The fact that one facility in North Carolina controls such a massive portion of the nation's IV fluid supply is nothing short of negligence. A healthcare system as vast and complex as that of the United States should not be so dependent on a single plant, vulnerable to natural disasters and other unforeseen disruptions. Yet here we are, once again scrambling to patch up the cracks exposed by a catastrophic event. The implications are terrifying. If the U.S. cannot maintain a steady supply of something as basic as IV fluids in peacetime, what happens during a larger crisis? Imagine the chaos if the country were under attack or in the midst of a full-blown war. Would the U.S. be able to provide the basic medical care required to treat thousands, possibly millions, of injured citizens and soldiers? The IV fluid shortage in the wake of Hurricane Helene suggests the answer is a resounding no. The long-term fallout. Even as Baxter begins importing IV fluids from its overseas facilities and attempts to bring its North Cove plant back online, the reality is that this crisis will not be resolved overnight. The company has stated that it will take time to restore production to full capacity, and until then, hospitals will continue to face critical shortages. What's more troubling is that this isn't just about one storm or one facility. The IV fluid shortage is a symptom of a much larger problem: America's over-reliance on a fragile, centralized supply chain for medical necessities. The vulnerability exposed by Hurricane Helene is likely to linger, even as production ramps up again. Hospitals may soon face rationing not just of IV fluids but of other essential medical supplies, as more cracks in the healthcare supply chain are revealed. The United States is a country that prides itself on innovation, yet when it comes to safeguarding its healthcare system, it is woefully unprepared. Instead of a resilient, diversified supply chain, the country has created a system that crumbles under pressure. The response from the government, though swift in activating the Defense Production Act, feels like too little, too late. Why weren't contingency plans in place for a disaster like this? Why were hospitals left to fight over dwindling supplies? A dangerous precedent.
Trauma team, report to the ED.
The ramifications of this shortage extend beyond just the immediate crisis. Hospitals are now forced to triage, making difficult decisions about who receives care and who does not. This prioritization process could have deadly consequences. Patients who are unable to receive IV fluids when needed could suffer from dehydration, shock, and a host of other complications. In some cases, delays in surgery and treatment could prove fatal. Worse, this crisis sets a dangerous precedent. It shows that the U.S. healthcare system is not built to withstand shocks, whether they come from natural disasters, pandemics, or geopolitical crises. And while the administration is taking baby steps to address the immediate problem by invoking the Defense Production Act, there's little indication that long-term solutions are in place or even being planned to prevent future shortages. One can only imagine the chaos if the United States were simultaneously dealing with a war or a national emergency on top of this shortage. The country's lack of preparedness in securing its medical supply chain could easily translate into thousands of unnecessary deaths. Lessons not yet learned. The shortage of IV fluids in the wake of Hurricane Helene is not an isolated incident. It's the result of years of neglect, short-sighted policy decisions, and a failure to learn from past crises. After Hurricane Maria, experts warned that the country needed to diversify its medical manufacturing hubs and create a more resilient supply chain. Yet those warnings went largely unheeded. Now, with hospitals across the country struggling to get by on half of their usual shipments, the consequences of that neglect are being felt on a national scale. The healthcare system, which was already stretched thin by the COVID-19 pandemic, now faces yet another crisis, one that could have been avoided. A call to action. The U.S. healthcare system is on life support, and Hurricane Helene has exposed just how fragile it is. This is not just about fixing the current shortage, it's about rethinking how the country secures its medical supplies. The government must take immediate steps to diversify manufacturing and ensure that no single facility holds a disproportionate share of such critical resources. The clock is ticking. If the U.S. doesn't address these vulnerabilities now, the next crisis could be far worse. Hurricane Helene has offered a stark warning, one that policymakers cannot afford to ignore. The stakes are too high, and the cost of inaction could be thousands of lives.